BevVan Phillips, and she's going to do a presentation on home safety, which is very important, especially if you are dealing with someone who is living with dementia, but not just those either. So I'd like to introduce her that she is professionally an occupational therapist, among other things, and she has certifications. She has specialized in residential environmental modification and assistive technology for over 25 years in the private, government, and nonprofit sector. She has been licensed as a realtor and owned a construction company while maintaining her license as an occupational therapist, which does give her a unique perspective on how people interact with their homes. She is a frequent speaker on the benefits of home modifications and assistive technology on successful rehabilitation, aging in place, and quality of life. And she has contributed to a number of periodicals based on her experiences and her training. So I would like for us to welcome BevVan Phillips.
Well, thank you very much. As we begin, I want you to humor me and imagine that you are on a boat or a kayak, some small vessel on this river, and that you do know how to paddle and maneuver the boat, and everything is going just fine. You've got control of where you're going, everything is cool and calm. The problem is you don't know what's around the bend of this river. There could be eddies where the water current is turning in circles, or little rocks or big rocks, or even a waterfall. And the way you know how to paddle the boat right now, where it is not going to work. You need to be able to change how you're rowing and how you're paddling to be able to maintain control of the little boat that you're on. And that's why I am here today. That's what I hope to do, is bring you some tools and some concepts and resources about modifying your home so that you can keep it safer and allow greater quality of life and maintain a feeling of a little bit of control, that you know how to change and adapt as you float down this river with its various turns and bends. Life is like this river, and if you're a caregiver, it's especially like a river. If you're a caregiver of someone who has dementia, it is especially like this kind of river. So we're going to talk about these things, starting with home safety assessments and screenings, because you can't solve any problems if you don't really understand what the problem is. When I talk about that, I want to bring it down to you and tell you that home modifications, it's not rocket science. It's really just remodeling and picking out things to use. It's pretty simple, except that it's not simple. You have to choose the tool and the change that's right for that period. And I want to guarantee you that the things I'm going to tell you about are going to work for some people some of the time, and it might work for a person some of the time, and you might have to put that tool down and pick up another tool, because as you're navigating the river, you need to be able to change what tools you're using so that you can maintain the direction that you want to go in. But our homes, our environment, this is one of the things that influence our quality of life. How well we use our homes impacts what we can do. To understand what to change in your house, or what tools to use, you need to be able to figure out what the problem is. And so you need to start with a screening or an assessment. And a lot of people say, oh, they're the same thing. But I want to tell you that a screening and assessment are different. A screening it can be oriented toward falls or bariatric conditions or dementia, but it's general. It's not directed at any one person. It's generalized. And it's usually a checklist And it can be done whether you're in front of the person or you're on the phone with a caregiver or you're doing it yourself and then talking about the results with your medical team or your support team. It's generalized. It's usually free, which is great. It's usually offered as a complimentary service by construction companies that do home modifications or companion care companies, and it can provide valuable information to you. I also want to tell you that sometimes things that are free are worth exactly what you're paying for, right? So, an assessment is a little different. An assessment starts with an examination of the person. What can they do? How do they interact with the world around them? How do they perceive things? What are their medical conditions? Hopefully in home modifications, it also includes you, the caregiver. What can you do? What's important to you? What are you trying to accomplish? And then it looks at the environment and where the environment is not supporting what people are able to do and what people want to do. And then you know how to change it. I'm going to bring to you, though, this screening tool, which is often used as part of an assessment, and this is free online. This is a pretty good tool. It's the Home Safety Self-Assessment, and you can search for it looking HSSAT. I would love to bring it to you, but it's well over 40 pages of great information, so go get it yourself. And it's geared toward falls, but we're going to look at that because falls are a great risk that you can do something about, both for the person that you're caring for, and I'm looking around the room, and I'm sorry to say this, but for most of you, you and I are also statistically in that age group that are at greater risk of falling. And people who have dementia are at greater risk because they're not focused on their mobility, or they may be hyper-focused on something else which can create the opportunity for falling. So we'll look at this fall risk tool that you can get. But before I do that, I just want to circle back one more time. Really, really think hard before you bring solutions in. This is just an example of somebody who did fall getting out of the tub, and her family said, I see the problem. Mom fell getting out of the tub. They knew some solutions. They bought a very nice bath seat. They bought a clamp-on tub rail, which wasn't really a great idea in this situation. And they installed a grab bar in a pretty good spot, but it's not a safe grab bar. It can cause shoulder injuries. So she still had trouble getting in and out, and that's when they brought in some help. Dr. Masters talked about this. We're self-sufficient, but we have to be open to help sometimes to bring in that extra set of eyes. And it was easy to see that the lady in gray has a balance issue, which wasn't helped by reaching down low for the clamp-on tub rail. It actually exacerbated her moving past her safe center of gravity. But the real issue was she had joint limitations and strength limitations, and she couldn't get her feet over the side of the tub. Once you had those things particularly identified, you could come up with a solution that worked then, and the idea that that's going to work for as long as it works, and then you might go around another bend in the river and make another change. So, enough lecturing. This is the home safety self-assessment, and it's really cool because you get a single page looking at an area of your home. It's a simple checklist, but then on the next page it gives you some simple ideas, and then at the end of the manual it goes through in greater detail and shows you pictures of things. So if it says, oh, you may not want to have a threshold, you might want a threshold ramp, it shows you what a threshold ramp is. So it's a very, very helpful tool. As we go through this, and this is falls, I want to talk to you a little bit about a particular thing for dementia. In my experience, I've found that sometimes people in certain stages of their dementia have difficulty going through doorways, and it causes a lot of issues. And sometimes it's because it's just so challenging. The doorway has a door frame, and you have to deal with getting through that. But as you're getting through that, You have to start changing where you are in space by putting a foot down and controlling that balance from one foot to the other while you might be reaching for handrails. And you might be perceiving a huge hole. It might not look like steps. It might look like a big chasm. And it's very, very frightening, and therefore it leads to a lot of difficulty getting through the door. So one simple change, simple, because it means redoing your steps, is making that first step level when you go out the door so that you can deal with getting through the doorway first, and then you can start managing changes in level with however you demark the steps. And that does help some people some of the time. So I want to throw that one in for you. And so then it goes through your back door. Then it looks at your hallways and foyers. And here it's talking about lighting and clutter as fall risks, and they are. But they're also important when you're arranging your home for somebody that you're caring for, because if they have dementia or they have poor vision, the shadows themselves can be very confusing on the floor and can be perceived as things that are not just shadows. And that makes it hard for someone to move through that space. The clutter can also be really an attention thing. So that if you're trying to engage, like let's go do this behavior, and then the clutter is just too enticing. It's something to be done, which distracts from what you're trying to do. Also, clutter is one of those things that make it really easy for a person with some types of dementia to put things carefully, but to you it's perceived as it's lost. So clutter is really an issue. You really want to try to get away from clutter, and you want to make sure your lighting is even and not glaring. For fall risks, it then goes through living rooms, which can count for any room, talking about cords on the floor and slippery rubs, and room to move. It also talks about repairing broken furniture. I'm going to throw in that you got to look at your furniture and people sitting on your furniture, and if you really want older individuals to get up off that furniture without a lot of effort, you need to have two things. Their hips need to be level with or higher than their knees when they're sitting, and you need to be able to get your feet kind of tucked under you so that you can lean forward in that part of getting up and down. So I get it. Some of you have furniture you have loved and cherished for 30 years, but if you've gone around the bend in the river and that furniture isn't working anymore, that's something you could change. Put some furniture in there that's a lot easier for people to get up and down from if you really want people to get up and down. It goes to the kitchen. A lot of good safety tips there. I'm going to say that cooking activities are really, really important, but they're very frightening. A lot of fires happen in kitchens. A lot of pots are scorched beyond belief because people walk off. One great product that's not on your resource list, but you got room to write it, is iGuard. iGuard is one of those stove motion detector things, so that if there's no motion after a time period that you can set, it turns the stove off. And they have them for electric and gas. So that's kind of a cool piece of technology. It goes into bedrooms, looking at safety on bedrooms. Here, for safety with fall risks, it's saying keep the communication device, the telephone, closer to the bed. I'm going to tell you that with some people, at some times with dementia, you don't want a telephone closer to the bed that's working because you don't need a lot of phone calls going out, perhaps. Okay, so this is really cluttered. I'm going to also say that when you arrange a bedroom for someone, think about what action you want them to take. I had a family, she moved her mother in, they moved together, so she moved all her mother's furniture into the bedroom, which is often a great idea, it's familiar furniture. But she arranged it in a typical way, and then her mom couldn't tolerate having it ever moved again. Her mom had an ensuite bathroom, and the difficulty was at night she was falling because she couldn't go 10 feet to get to the bathroom. And it was just a big open space, because it was marvelously huge bedroom. And she actually had video of her mother moving the walker out of the way to fall her way to the bedroom door. Or moving the walker out of the way and leaving the bedroom and ending up in the laundry room. So there are things you can do. You know, you can make where you want people to go very enticing, and where you don't want people to go closed or moved so it's not as obvious. Also keeping in mind that unfortunately, when people move through a course of dementia, they often can't learn well if their mobility issues start after they've already experiencing dementia, or they forget how to use their mobility equipment like walkers. It's very, very challenging to be able to use the walker without, constant piece. So relying on that at night was not an option. My idea of moving the furniture so that it made a natural grip all the way to the bathroom, the family just couldn't even tolerate the idea of that, because they knew how desperately she hated to have her furniture moved. So you come to these places where you've really got to sit and figure out which is better and worse, okay? So, bedrooms. And the bathroom. Gosh, how could I not talk about the bathroom? So many different things. We believe in our hearts that most falls occur in the bathroom, but actually most falls occur in the part of the house where people are moving. Stairs, kitchens, living rooms. But bathrooms are horrible because you're usually undressed. It's just awful. And there's also a lot of issues and fights that occur in bathrooms when you're trying to help someone with dementia. Teepa Snow, we've heard her name already today. For the behavioral aspect of working in a bathroom, I would look at her videos and how she communicates and how she understands how people perceive things. For safety, looking at grab bars, looking at all kinds of things. It just depends on what the person can do. I would offer that if you feel like you're going to do any construction, if you feel like, wow, I know this tub is going to be an issue and I'm not going to use a tub sliding bench or tub transfer bench, if you're going to do construction, do it as early as you can in your course down this river. It is true that if a person can learn to accept that new environment, they may forget it again, but at least you're not living in a construction zone. A construction zone is in the top 10 stressful things for anybody. If you are a caregiver and a person with dementia, it is just awful. So avoid construction if you can. A product I wanted you to know about is Slip Doctor. Slip Doctors. I get that on Amazon, and it's a friction surface. You can just roll it on. It's nice and clear. You can choose between acrylic fiberglass or tile. Slip Doctors. And it lasts a year or more, depending on how many things you do, but it's a very nice, inexpensive product. Then this safety thing goes through stairwells, obviously handrails, good lighting, but if you're dealing with somebody who has dementia, at some point you've got to decide, do I want to make this stairwell accessible to them, or do I want to make this stairwell off limits? And we'll show some different ideas later about how you might do that safely with an adult. It goes into the laundry and the basement as far as fall risks. I'm going to mention to you cleaning products, household poisons, different kinds of things like that. Because just as when we raised our children or we paid attention to our nieces and nephews, we knew that they hadn't developed the judgment to understand that when I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink something, but it's not the first thing that I find. I need to find something that's healthy to drink. So again, things just creep up on you. I'm sure I'm looking at everybody's faces and they're like, of course you lock it up. But it just slides up on you. You don't realize that Tide doesn't always look like laundry detergent. Okay? Then it goes through the garage, and then the cage that's what it has at the end, where it actually shows you different things. So that's the Home Safety Self-Assessment, HSSAT, look for version 5. The others of versions are just fine. But it's very nice self-screening tool you can use to make yourself safer from falls and the person you're caring for, and hopefully those things about dementia will help as well. The last thing as I wrap up home safety is you need to make some plans. And now I feel so grateful for following Dr. Masters, because she talked about planning. Planning again. You just have to be courageous and try to anticipate what's around the bend. I could have you raise your hands and you could all joyfully say, yes, I know, people over 60, 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4. But did you know that people over 60 are twice as likely to die in a fire as the general population? Think about this. If it takes you 3 minutes to get somebody out of bed, 7 minutes to get them to the front door, and that's on a good day when you're calm and there's no smoke and no noise, fires go very quickly through home residences now. So you need to have a plan for dealing with that. And the National Fire Prevention Association has some great literature on fire safety and making fire plans. You need to make a plan for storm safety. This is Nebraska, right? We know we're going to have tornadoes, the power's going to go out, different kinds of things like that. So make a plan for storm safety. Where are you going to go? I only just recently learned about putting on a sports helmet or a motorcycle helmet. And it was kind of a light bulb and a oh duh moment for me. But if you're not going to be able to get somewhere safe, at least protect your head. Now, many of you know that the person you're caring for is not going to tolerate something on their head. That's okay, put it on your head. You are actually their safety net. But that's something you could do. Plan for storm safety and make a plan for your absence. And again, I won't belabor this point because Dr. Masters talked about it, but what is going to happen? What can you have happen immediately if something happens to you and you need to go to the hospital? Who can get there right away and who's their backup? What's your plan for a week? What's your plan for a month or longer? Be courageous and put that plan together. So that's safety. Talking about accessibility, like making it usable, but it has to be usable for the person themselves. And I won't talk a lot about accessibility, but getting into the house is important. We all just think about ramps. People with mobility issues and are using walkers or canes probably should not be on ramps. They're not as safe. It's a big challenge. I like vertical platform lifts. They're not inexpensive. They are very costly, but they can be tucked away in your garage. You can ride on them, sit on them. So sometimes when you're thinking about the future, think about what's going to work for the longest period of time for the most variety of potential situations. Even something as simple, please note my air quotes, simple as installing grab bars, you need to think about, well, where do I need them? What activity are we doing then? What part of the getting up and down is the issue? Do I need to put like red bands on it to entice a person to be reaching for it, or something that they would like to touch so that they actually go for the grab bar instead of me trying to do something stupid like put their hand on it. So even grab bars matter, looking at what they're doing. Then you've got to be adaptable, right? Back to that concept of let's make it work for as long as possible. And adaptable design is just actually pretty smart. It's doing the base and then being able to add to it or pull away from it to make it continue to work for you. And then finally, this one is very important, and Forgiving Home concept comes from the book Alzheimer's Proofing Your Home by Mark Werner. That is a fabulous book, well worth the money. Alzheimer's Proofing Your Home by Mark Werner. And the Forgiving Home concept talks about actually reducing access to places in order to make the house a place where you can have quality of life. And it depends on what a person's awareness and perception and interaction with their environment is. Whether they just need a reminder, like the lady with the stop sign, to wait for someone else just to accompany them, or they need the stairs to actually kind of visually go away by bringing the gate that looks just like the rest of the hardware, the railing around the stairs. And this gate was custom made by a contractor, but another great resource is gatekeepers, because you can have anybody who's just kind of halfway handy do one of these gates. And it has a nice baffle lock on it so that it's, you need to understand how to get that lock open to make the gate move. But it's a great barrier for stairs, and it's designed for adult weight. Another concept with Forgiving Home, you've got 3 characteristics. The first is that you are reducing the potential for accidents, and you're thinking ahead. So medication management, really thinking about how well a person can get to their medication when it is. This is one of them available on the market now, which is a locked box, and it alarms when it's time, and it keeps chiming till the medication is taken. There's a lot of different things like that, which are safer than the little Mediset, the little plastic deals. The personal emergency response system, because the second one, oops, I forgot the second one. The second one is really important for quality of life. You understand that there is a potential for a person to feel failure. It doesn't really matter where a person is in the course of their dementia. They don't want to fail. They understand when people are mad at them, they're fearful, and they're going to act on that fear or on that irritation. And so you're trying to reduce the opportunities for those things to happen in your safe zones, which we'll talk about, because nobody wants to live life hearing, please don't go over there again. What are you doing over there again? Don't touch that. Put that down. You don't want to live your life that way. You don't want the people you love to live their life that way. And then the third is you know that no matter what you do, accidents are going to happen, and you try to minimize the bad results of those accidents. And my friend who sells and installs the personal emergency response system taught me to always tell caregivers, you wear the button if you're caring for someone with dementia or a cognitive impairment, because if something happens to them, you can call. If something happens to you, who's going to make that call? So just a little flip in thinking about those buttons on who wears that. The zoning, this is part of Mark Werner's piece. You think about your house and you have danger zones. These are the areas that the person you love doesn't go in. Okay? Could be the garage, could be wherever. You have a respite zone. This is what Dr. Masters was talking about. This is so hard to do, but you have a real physical place in your house as a caregiver that when you go into that place, you shed the caregiver part and you can pull in just yourself. That is really, really hard to do, but it is so valuable. Of course, you have to make sure the person you're caring for is safe so that you can relax and really shed that for a few moments. But you need a respite zone, whatever that is to you. And then you have the safe zone, which hopefully is most of the house, where the person you love or you're caring for can maneuver safely and successfully and do whatever's important to them to be doing in a way that is good and that we aren't always fussing at each other. So that is from Mark Werner's book, and he has great examples and ways to help you do that. Here's a few tools. Alzheimer's Store, alzstore.org is on your resource list. And another good one is, I've got to say this properly, so I'm going to just take a look at my notes. Mindcare Store, mindcarestore.com. They have products specifically for people who have dementia of all kinds. So this is a picture of a refrigerator latch. They have refrigerator locks. That's actually locking things closed. There is a picture of the diversion. So this is a really beautiful picture of a door bookcase, which is on the back side of the door, so that at some times for many people, it would just not be encouraging. They would just go right by it and not see door, I'm going through the door. You never, 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 as a safety tip, want to lock people in to places, but you can definitely lock people out of places. Notification or alerts are ways that you can, in that safe area, know when the person is leaving. Kind of have an idea about when they leave the safe zone so that you can go do something else, because you know when they leave the safe zone, you're going to know about it. So it can be a pressure pad, it could be motion sensors, it could be the little magnet lock that you could put on windows and doors, but that way you are not following someone around 24 hours a day, 27 days a week on alert. I have caregivers who use baby monitors because they think they're saving money and they latched onto an idea. And I'm like, yeah, but are you listening all the time? Oh yeah. Well, A, people can't listen all the time, but B, it is so stressful. You're on alert all the time. People using video cameras. That's where the woman videotaped her mother moving the walker, but she wasn't seeing it real because she slept through it because she couldn't watch the video all night long. So you've got to, notifications and alerts, go to those websites and learn about those. Those are very helpful. So this was a really quick trip down the river, but my hope was that I did give you some concrete tools you can use and ideas to kind of help you shift how you're doing, because to succeed in this, you need to be a person. To succeed, it will help you if you are a person who not only changes when you have no choice, but can anticipate the need to change and be able to be looking ahead that way, and maybe even embrace some of those changes so that you have a little bit more control with your paddling. As you go around the bend and you hit a little eddy, you can change how you're doing it and still go in the direction you want to go. Right, so, any quick questions there? Yes, ma'am.
So what happens if you have somebody who wants to do like a home assessment to come in, like a family member that says, I'm leaving the hospital, I need to make sure that my home is safe for my mother to come home. Are there therapists that can come out and do a home assessment to let them know what you're going to need?
I'm going to repeat your question because I wasn't sure if I'm mic'd or not. But the question, which is great, is how do you find a person to come do that assessment when you have someone especially leaving the hospital setting? Can of worms. Sometimes the hospital has someone who will do a discharge visit really, really close to discharge. And that's just the way our medical system works. Sometimes they don't. If you're going to have a companion care company come in, many of the companion care companies, and I'm kind of looking at people in the room, but anyway, they can come in and they will have a good screening tool, and they will have knowledge to kind of pick and choose through that. Home health will provide probably an occupational therapist to do a home safety assessment, but you have to make sure you're asking for that, not just rehab for the particular issue they may have, that they're looking at home safety assessment. To get home health requires a whole lot of steps. I know that you guys understand what I'm talking about. You can't just call up a home health agency and say, I'd like you to come to my house. You have to qualify for home health. Outpatient therapists can come under Medicare and most insurances and get a home safety assessment covered. but outpatient therapists typically work in their outpatient office and don't come to your home. That's a little issue. There is a increasing popularity of mobile outpatient therapists, which can do that. And I'm not here to toot anybody's horn, but Key Complete Therapies is a mobile outpatient therapy. They're, oh gosh, forgot their name. There's another one in town, shoot, starts with an S, and this is, I'm so sorry. I should have written that one down for you. But there are mobile outpatient clinics who can do that. Can you think of it? Oh, you're making me feel better. It really isn't because I don't work for them that I can't come up with it. But anyway, I hope that helps. Yeah. You can talk to the social worker at the hospitals. There's great guides out, CCA, is it .org or .com? CCA has a handbook online where you can find different services, the Blue Book, and then just like Dr. Masters, I'm going to end up going and call Eastern Nebraska Office on Aging and ask those questions there. Can you help me?
The other thing too is always talk to the physician, because this all starts with the physician's order. You know, so
For the
so
therapist,
if your physician's getting ready to discharge, or if you're working with folks, families, always have them talk to the physician. Now, sometimes hospitalists might be a little reluctant to ask for that, but then go back to the primary care physician.
Yep. Yep. And definitely, one little thing a lot of people don't know about is that if a person over 60 has fallen at any point in the past 6 months, Medicare will do that outpatient home safety assessment. That's a covered service. It's part of what the Aging in Place Council and the Steady Plan requires is too strong. But anyway, it should be available. Can anybody else answer her question? Because it's huge.
Unfortunately, since COVID, a lot of like the rehab facilities are very reluctant. I mean, we even have challenges with the Office on Aging, because a lot of times I'd like a home safety eval done. We just requested one the other week, and absolutely not. They won't go out and do it. And so yeah, it's a great question.
It is really hard because that's where the problems are occurring. And if you can't get someone to come in and look, that's why I like the home safety self-assessment, because you can go through, do your checklist, you can write down per area, and you can bring at least that in. You can be really bold if the person's still in the hospital, videotape your house. Take that videotape in or the photos in and talk to the therapist there and pick their brain about what they would do. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for letting me come talk about my favorite topic. And I hope that you left with at least one thing to add to your toolbox.